Hello everyone, my name's Simon. I'm doing something that I've been thinking about doing for many years, which is design a role-playing game, fantasy role-playing game, but I assume it could be adapted at a later date to different genres, well in the future, if at all. What I might do is just talk about what I want the game to be, to achieve. Number one, it's not going to be a variation or derivant of a D20 system. It's not a D20 system, it's a D6 system. There were once popular in the past games like Traveller and others that used just D6. I like D20 systems, don't get me wrong. I like the scalability of D4s and up for damage dice, for instance. That's always good. I think I've got a solution around that using D6s, but we'll see. And otherwise, I also want to make sure that this is a non-archetype type game. And having said that, there will be archetypes. There's always archetypes in fantasy games. There's always the fighter, the paladin, the mage, etc. Except I'm not going to lock people into a archetype class-based system where they have to pick a class, profession, or even multi-class. What we will be having is a series of attributes and characteristics and skills that apply, some powers and some talents that people can pick from. These names are all just starter names. They might change as we go, depending on how the game starts to develop and feel. I should just mention that so far as I've developed this game, it's just been in my head. So I'm about to commit it to paper for the first time. I've got some notes that I made earlier, but I thought I really wanted to just enjoy the process. And if I'm lucky and people see that the stream is interesting, maybe I'll be able to get some people to come in and help me out with their ideas as we go. Having said that, I sort of know what I want, and I don't think I'm going to compromise in too many areas, but I'm not so close-minded that I'm just going to ignore what's possible. That'd be silly. All right, so without any further ado, let's open up. Let's have a look at what we can open up in terms of a document that we can work on. I might just move that over there. Okay, great. Now it looks like I'm actually looking away from the document. I don't know if I can move where I'm positioned, but maybe next time I'll position this little box with me in it to the left. So it looks like when I'm looking at the camera, I'm actually looking at the document, which is completely opposite at the moment, but that's fine. Okay, so we've got the document open, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to give it a quick header. Put all sixes. And again, I'm not going to format anything here. I'm simply just going to type down my thoughts as we go. I'll format probably in MS Word or Publisher or some other document creator. And really just using this because I can't share a Word document in the stream. I can only share a tab document. So with that limitation, let's just press on. Okay, we've got all sixes. Excuse my typing. Boot. Now, I'm not Canadian, so let's just fix that. I'm not used to this document system, but I'm sure we can just do some fundamental changes here to heading. All sixes is a C role playing game using 6 side dice. I'm just going to put in brackets here, D. We'll be using the acronym D a lot. So we will be using things like 1D to represent 1 dice, etc. 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D. And we anticipate we'll probably get up to around the 10D level when we're talking about high-level characters and things like that. But anyway, let's just move on. I'll add a bit more to that later. I'd like to come back to this, actually, if I do pick up some followers, just to see what their thoughts are on what the game, my ideas of what the game is and what they think they'd like the game to be as well. Who knows? I've got some issues here with YouTube where it says something's gone wrong. So if anyone does pop in, which I think is so unlikely, it's ridiculous. But if someone does, then just know I can't see anything if someone types it in. Okay. Anyway, like I said, I doubt very much anyone will be looking at this. Maybe no one will ever see it. Who knows? But if you do see it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm told the algorithm likes that sort of thing. So the more people do that, the better. That'd be great. Okay, let's crack on. So that's what it's about. And I think probably the best place to start with any of these character builders, any of these role-playing games, is with the character. The character is where everything sits. So next. Heading will be about the character, and it is a heading. Okay, and again, I'm just going to outline what I've got in my head, and then maybe we'll come back and just fill in some details. So let's start with the character bit. Okay, so stats for me, and there's many great stat systems. D&D, of course, with the physical and the mental split, and the special system of Fallout 4. I love that. I'm a huge Fallout 4 fanboy. But one thing I think they never address, at least not well, is a character's size, especially because we're in a fantasy world. So fantasy world, you can play half-orcs, huge bulking half-orcs that are just meant to be full-on strength and muscle and bulk, brawn. Or you could play a tiny little halfling or a gnome that zips through the feet and really relies on nimbleness and agility to evade attacks and simply get out of the way of the big guys. And that's reflected in a lot of stat adjustments that are made. I'm not a big fan of the current D&D system where just ignore what your race is and just add +2 whatever you like. Makes no sense whatsoever. Just completely silly. I want to go with the min-max system in by race. I have no problem calling them a race. They're this is the fantasy world, right? We got cats, dogs, elves, dwarves, humans, right? It's like that's just the reality of the system. If you want to do a different campaign mode where that's not the case, feel free. I'm not going to tell you what to do and what not to do. But in this case, we're going to have size as a statistic. Not sure whether to call it statistic or characteristic. But let's just go, let's go with characteristic. Great. So the first one we've got is size. And I might just dot point. So size will go huge, large, medium, small, and tiny. It just gets across the whole gamut of what's possible, right? Let's see, a couple of them dot points. Characteristic is a heading 2, and size is a heading 3. Great. Our next characteristic will be strength. And I want to put an abbreviation here, just up front, so that I can just simply say STR. Everyone knows it means strength, right? Like, let's not worry about it too much. So here's where I'm going to vary somewhat from other systems. I like strength. However, I think strength is a combination of the person's brawn and their fitness. I don't like systems where you can have someone with an 18 strength and a 3 constitution. For me, I mean, you should make the argument that they're, well, I don't think you can make the argument. You can say, well, they've had a childhood sickness and it's affected the constitution, so, but still, they're massively huge and can work out with weights all day, every day. So it doesn't make any sense to me. So what I'm going to do is break strength up into brawn and fitness, and you'll see why they're joined when we start talking about progressing, and I'm going to call these things statistics, right? Stats. So characteristics will be strength, and then underneath that, I'm going to brawn, and fitness. Great. So brawn and fitness. If you look at that, brawn is going to be raw physical strength and muscular power. So let's just make these distinctions now. Fitness is going to be health, physical health, and stamina. Okay. So that's strength, brawn, and fitness. Great so far. Okay. Now the next characteristic is dexterity. And I always like the idea that a character can be very well coordinated, but not necessarily quick on their feet. So an example might be a dwarf who has got a great capability of aiming a crossbow, and just like a dead eye to do so, but can't really jump around nimbly, right? I think they all stem from the same hand-eye coordination and grace and ease, but they're separate as well. So let's have a look at splitting the two. I'm going to say coordination for one and nimbleness for the other. Okay, so I think I've explained that already. We'll say that the coordination is the skill and section using hands to tasks control and okay, great. It's got a good spell checker, which I need. Now, nimbleness is going to be quickness and yeah, I'll so just quickly quickness. Okay, so that's going to be our dex. Oops, heading 3. So it's heading 1, heading 2. Yeah, so there should be heading 3. And then, of course, heading 4. And heading. Great. So far, we've got strength and dexterity sorted out. Now, another mainstay of fantasy games, of course, is the intelligence. And another thing I've always struggled with a little bit is splitting intelligence and wisdom. Okay. Now, I get the idea that you might have an idiot savant who's just got no awareness of things around them, but logical capability or problem-solving capability that's through the roof. So I can understand that split. And I think I've got a way to deal with these splits in the traits. But for me, I've always thought of wisdom as being part of intelligence, as in the ability to retain the lessons learned from what you've encountered in the world, right? So you might, well, let's write it down. So we'll just do intelligence. So I split it this way. I say, okay, reason and wisdom. And why do I do that? So reason for me is the ability to interpret new information, problem solving, and it's a problem because you don't understand it yet. But you can take the facts, and you are either very good or poor, or in between, of taking those facts and reasoning out rationally what is happening, what happened, or the reason. For instance, why is a candle, the flame on a candle, blowing a certain way, right? And you might say, okay, well, if you've encountered that before, wisdom kicks in and you say, okay, well, I've got an insight because I know why that happens. It means there's a draft, and if it's blowing towards a wall, that means there's probably a secret door, right? But that's gain knowledge. Now, if you never knew that, and you had to put two and two together, maybe you just shrug your shoulders and say, oh, I don't know, right? Or you go, wait, wind makes it move. Maybe I get a feather or something else and just check the wind currents, and then I can work out that there's a secret door. Maybe, right? So I'm just going to say that reason is technical. Logical, rational thinking, and right. And the reason that I think that's important is because when we come to spellcasting, I want the guy, the mage. The mage is the problem solver. The mage knows there's these different components in the world in terms of magic, and that spells are a recipe that he has to figure out. Yeah, whereas wisdom will be more about devotion and insight into the divine, so that we can get hold of that that divine inspiration through the wisdom that we espouse. Right? And again, I'm using fantasy terms here. I don't actually believe in divine spellcasting or arcane spellcasting for that matter, but we're talking about fantasy world. So wisdom will be a deep understanding and insight, often gained sound judgment. And it's not that you need that particular experience for wisdom. It's that you've experienced things in the world that are like this, or just give you a deeper understanding of the world in general. So wisdom will be a lot of where law skills will be kept, and you'll be going into that. So you may not have experienced it, but you've read about it. So your wisdom is that retention of understanding that you've gained, and it'd just be interesting in the role playing how that's built up. I always think of you're in the dungeon and you come across a room with a bookcase, and no one cares, but the mage might, right? Or the guy that wants to increase his understanding of the world might look for a book that he's never read before, to gain more wisdom out of that book. And there'll be mechanics to allow that to happen. So we won't be just, I was part of a party that went into a dungeon, slaughtered a bunch of stuff. Maybe I found some scrolls or something like that that helped me out. But Gaining this ongoing knowledge will be, for some characters, a sort of a guiding principle for their character. And I just don't think it's necessarily fleshed out enough in some systems. Sort of in a game where it's a lot of hack and slash, yeah, you get the point. Anyway, so we're doing heading 3s for each of those. Oh no, heading 4s. So I don't much like dogs. Okay, that's great. Moving on. So now we're going to come to our last characteristic. And I've been thinking about this one a fair bit. There's a, what I've been thinking about is charisma is I believe, often just thought about as how attractive or how much of a magnetic personality people have. And it is that, I guess. And charisma is important for certain play styles. But I think there's something more in it. And I think that in the fantasy world, there's quite often a lot of powers and abilities that are indistinct from magic or magical, that are based on a person's, well, I'm going to call it aura, for want of a better word. I hope someone can give me a better word. So with the charisma, I'm actually going to call it a presence. Okay, this is the presence that that people, it's how the outside world looks upon a person. Okay, so the first one would be charisma. Pardon me. And then the next attribute or characteristic here will be the aura. And so with charisma, I think it's about charm. And appeal. Inspires. But so that's clearly saying that you just have it. You have the riz, as the kids say, that makes others want to follow you, or emulate you, or just simply give you the day of time. But charisma is quite often in other systems simply linked to the sorcerer or to the paladin. And I know it's not just physical appeal. It's a magnetic charm or appeal, and it might be that you're just saying, well, I've got a gruff demeanor, but everyone can tell there's something more about me underneath, etc. I'd be more inclined just to say that you can be like a really ugly, non-verbal, and just not magnetically charming to inspire anything in anyone, but you might have an aura that just that makes people feel ill at ease, that there's a hidden power within you that just shouldn't be effed with, that and the examples I want to think of are like the monk, right? The monk makes no attempt to charm you or to inspire devotion, although maybe they're charismatic. But a monk will have an underlying sense of menace. You might intrinsically know that this dude can snap your neck, kick your head off, whatever the case may be, right? Just because on an instinctive level, you understand there's something there. All right, so the way I put it is, distinctive. There, that should do it. So when we come to skills, powers, and traits, that will make itself known. It'll make more sense when we get there. Again, I'm just taking this out of my brain for the moment. It may change as we go along. Okay, so there are sets: size, strength, dexterity, intelligence, presence. Hopefully you can see what I'm trying to get from this. As I said, it will become more evident as we move forward to discuss the various skills, talents, and powers, how they're split up. But for now, I think always the next step in a character build process, once you understand the characteristics, and you might notice we're not talking about rolling any characteristics. All sixes will start very much as a 0-level character build. Everyone will have a D6 strength. Everyone will have a D6 dexterity, i.e., when you need to use your skill or talent or power that is listed underneath nimbleness or coordination, for instance, then that is what you will you'll roll that 1d6. We'll get more into how that progresses, but at its heart, you will progress skills that you use. Others will not move. You may have a character that is 10th level that has an intelligence of D6. And that's simply because you do nothing but drink and fight. You have never put any effort at all in increasing your ability to reason or the knowledge that you hold, because you don't care. At the same time, doing drinking and fighting is probably going to raise your brawn and your fitness and your coordination up, simply because you need coordination to hit people, and you want to hit them hard. So you'll be improving your brawn and your fitness, probably because you're probably going to take a few hits along the way. And again, we're just trying to make that fit in. So what do I think should be the next thing that you should worry about your character? The next thing you should worry about is your race. I just want to start off by saying, I know this can be a bit of a, excuse the pun, bit of a bugbear when it comes to talking about race, because of the whole thing that Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast are doing. I just don't know or care. I stopped playing Dungeons and Dragons at Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I really enjoyed playing that, but I stopped as a young kid. I played all the computer Dungeons and Dragons, enjoyed them immensely. I haven't seen, I think in Baldur's Gate 3 you can be trans or something like, or non-binary. Don't care, but for this particular game, race will matter, age will matter, but I'm not going to care about sexual differences in sex. Don't really concern me. So, having said that, let's just crack on with our races. Okay, so I think that just, and again, I encourage homebrew races. If you want to play a drow and you sit down with your game master and say what the rationale is, how he came to be there, and you want to work out with him what advantages or disadvantages that a drow race has, feel free. I don't care. Like, it's up to your game master how balanced his game is. If he wants to let someone play a 30-foot Cyclops with heat ray vision, that's up to you. And I discourage it. I prefer that Cyclopses just stay huge and menacing with a club, but again, up to him. Okay, so out of the box, and again, take them or leave them, change them. Once the game's in your hand, it's in your hands. Half full. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to say here is, I'll put a description in later. It'll be fairly by the book, sort of, there is a hybrid result of human and orc ancestry, larger than normal, muscular, liable to intellectual laziness and bad tempers. But you can change that. But what we're going to do here is we're going to give a size range. Okay, and that'll be important, because when we put the size table in, remember our sizes up here: huge, large, medium, small, and tiny. They're actually going to affect the maximum D level of both the person's quickness, so nimbleness, and their brawn. Yeah. So, if, for instance, the half orc, and let's just give a large to medium range. Okay. So, for instance, if you're a medium size, you are going to have a maximum D10. Now, D10 is the standard maximum of any of those attributes, sub-characteristics. So, but if you're a large, then I'm thinking you will actually have a maximum of D12. And the rationale I put behind that is you just have more potential for muscle mass on your frame, right? Now, the trade-off will be the maximum nimbleness will be perhaps a D8. So your strength, if you want to get to the highest level, once you're at the pinnacle of your race, your half orc might, have a D12 on his strength, but he's been limited to a D8 on his nimbleness. No matter how much he practices or anything else, there's simply the size of that body cannot become more nimble, right? I mean, it's probably already remarkable that such a large creature is a D8 nimble, right? So it's not. Now, on the other hand, if you're a small size, then you're limited the other way around. So maybe your brawn is maximum D8 and your nimbleness is maximum D12. So size matters in so much as that it changes the potential of what is what your race is capable of becoming, right? So even though I said there's no archetypes, there is, in effect, simply because we've got so many, everyone's a different race. Therefore, the races will lean themselves into certain archetypes. You're unlikely, for instance, because I think that let's just do the advantage first. Oh my God. So we're going to be working with night vision or dark vision. So he gets an advantage on dark vision. And because of his race is going to be large, we don't bother putting the brawn advantage there because it'll happen with his size. And the same with his quickness. We don't bother putting the disadvantage of the size because we've said he might be a medium size. A medium size, there'll be no advantage to his brawn and no disadvantage to his nimbleness. So, he's not a hulking half orc. He probably takes more after his human side, but we still have a disadvantage, and that will be the 6 max reason stat. So in the description we said, these guys just don't have the mental capability to raise their reason above D6. Now the wisdom isn't affected. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they're not the sharpest knife in the drawer. That's all we're saying. And it's a genetic thing. If you want to get into it, I don't care. Okay. Our next race. I just made a note. Are we heading to? Heading 1, heading 2. They're difficult to tell the difference sometimes. We just make a note at homebrew races, and I'll put some words around that. Encourage the homebrew, just make sure it's. I don't even care if it's a within reason or not. It's up to the player in the jam. How about it? Human. And we want to make. I'll just copy this, so I have to keep redoing them. We want to give humans the greatest amount of versatility. They don't have dark vision, so we get rid of that. And I don't want to give them a disadvantage. Now, again, if you want to homebrew a particular culture, human culture or something like that, where you say, okay, they grew up in the mountains and they're tougher than most, so fitness is going to be D12, right? And the only thing I'll say there is just make sure you put a disadvantage at the same time. But again, we're giving the humans a pretty good advantage with a possible large size. And again, large size, I would say. Your GM might say no. If you can make it cultural, like it might be a particular breed of people are larger than normal. I'd say the same with small. I haven't worked out the sizes, but I'm thinking large is creatures over 8 feet. 7 feet. Small is creatures under 4 feet. So the mediums are in a fairly wide band there. Tiny is like anyone under 1.5 feet, and then huge is your big guys. Over 12 feet sort of thing. So large is a fairly big range. It's huge will be when you talk about getting into the ogres. And again, if you want to homebrew an ogre creature, go for it. But just make sure you got the disadvantage in there. I don't know. I've been considering putting a roll on the size range. Like if you want to be a large, put a roll up, but I'd rather keep rolls to a minimum and just let it be agreed. So a large human would be someone over 7 foot, which isn't impossible, but we're in the fantasy realm here. I would argue that Conan in the movies would be still a medium size human, and it's hard for a human to be packed full of muscles at 7 foot. Hard for them to get around. Anyway, so there are advantages. They can plus 12 max. So when I say max, I mean that's the maximum that attribute can be raised to. So if they said reason and they get to the top pinnacle of their reasoning capability, any reason roll would be with 12d6. And that's quite a big advantage. Now, they don't get dark vision, which in the game I think will be a bit of a encumbrance. Okay, so let's power through these last races. elf, dwarf, halfling, and gnome. I wasn't sure whether to include the gnome, but I think they're a staple. I don't want to, like, for me, fantasy is just a staple. If you want to add some homebrew stuff, that's fine. I don't like the idea of flying creatures or turtle creatures or stuff that, I mean, if it's, let me correct that. If it's in the campaign, if it's in the world, then fine. That's fine. But that's where it should be kept, not in a core rule book. You know, a core rule book is just simply the base to start from. Again, I'm not looking to implement archetypes or character type classes or anything like that in this system. Maybe you might say, well, there's a monastery in your campaign, and that they concentrate on developing people's key auras. Therefore, you know, that's where you would go to develop that power, and that's fine. That's fine. We'll come to how to deal with the powers and stuff later. So anyway, let's just go through. Now I think in elf it's going to be either large, medium, or small. They're quite thin, and we will say that they. Oh, I didn't get a disadvantage. Let's go there. So the advantages for the elf will be plus D12 so they're well known for their bow use and ease of movement, gracefulness, and again, they are known to be quite weak. I don't want to give them a D6. Let's give them a D8 max fitness. And they'll be limited to their size for brawn, but we'll just make sure that they can get high in there. Okay, so with the dwarf, again, we're going to be medium small. You might have a smaller dwarf, sort of thief guy. Always, they're not all 6 foot wide at the shoulders. I'm thinking of like Uko and the Slain series. So again, we need to give them advantage and disadvantage. So we'll say these guys are fit. And by that, I don't mean they do aerobics every day, but they're just hardy creatures. Okay, so disadvantage for the dwarf. I think we look at D8. Nimbleness. Halfling. This guy's going to be small. There's no big ones. So we're going to look at giving them, again, their nimbleness will come from their size. adjustment. Okay, but the other thing that halflings always had, they're always known to be very sociable creatures. So I think they should get a D12 max charisma. As for disadvantage, probably they're going to get a disadvantage to brawn because of size. I don't think we should worry about. I want to say wisdom. I want to say they could work things out with curiosity, but they don't have a tendency not to learn lessons. So yeah, they just don't learn their lesson, which is so cool. Makes me want to play with them. Okay, gnomes. I'm gonna just put this in because I think it'd be cool. Because gnomes are notably smaller than halflings. They live in little burrows, so they may be small, they may be tiny, and the variance between that would be borderline on both sides of the small tiny. So a small gnome will be small for a small thing, and a tiny gnome will be sort of big for a tiny thing. And I think their advantage, again, their small size will give them a nimbleness advantage. But they're known as sort of tinkerers, as folk that build things underground, little gadgets. So I think it's like a D12 reason. Just much more potential in that sphere. Now, where would they? Aura. Yeah, a D8 makes it aura. And I think the rationale for that is that they're an unassuming and intrinsically natural or nature-based creature that because of that being just part of the earth, they just meld in and don't really give off auras as we would know them. Their presence is nah. Having said that, I love playing gnomes just to get in trouble. So I think that's actually pretty good. Let's go ahead and whoops. Heading to nice. Harpo. So what we've got there is we've worked out our start of the character build. We know the characteristics we're after. Size, strength, dexterity, intelligence, presence. We know what those components are, and they'll make more sense when we start to build out those powers and traits and skills. They'll fit, I think, logically underneath that structure. we have our races with the advantages, disadvantages. And I think that is that for today. So just thank you everyone that may watch this. I know there's none in the stream at the moment. That's cool. Stay tuned because I'll be adding more. Subscribe to the channel. I think that would be awesome if we get some people involved in this process. Hopefully we can spend the next few weeks putting this all together, and then I'll be out looking for people to help playtest. That would be awesome. All right, take care. See you next time.